Captain Zexhar of the Galactic Federation ship Luminous Dawn stared at the tactical display with growing dread. The crimson dots representing enemy vessels outnumbered his small patrol fleet by nearly 50-1. The Void Hunters had emerged from dark space without warning, their black ships appearing like nightmares against the starfield. Communications, send an immediate distress signal to all Federation forces, Zexhar commanded, his scaled hands gripping the command chair. Priority Alpha emergency code. His communications officer, a young Altarian with trembling tentacles, looked up from her console. Sir, the nearest Federation fleet is 3 standard days away. We won't last 3 hours against this force. The Void Hunters were known throughout the galaxy as destroyers of worlds. They consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. No species had ever successfully defended against a full-scale Void Hunter assault. The Federation's standing protocol was simple: evacuate and call for massive reinforcements. What about the humans? Asked Commander Yeath, Zexhar's second-in-command. Their territory borders this sector. Zexhar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his people. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Federation. Having joined only 5 cycles ago, they were considered primitive by most standards, still using kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion in many of their ships. Most Federation species viewed them as enthusiastic but limited allies. The humans have only a small patrol group in this region, Zexhar replied. Perhaps a dozen ships at most. What could they possibly do against this armada? The tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. Sir, Void Hunter Vanguard ships are moving to attack position. Estimated time to weapons range, 47 minutes. Zexhar made his decision. In the face of certain destruction, even primitive help was better than none. Send a distress call to the human patrol fleet. Transmit our tactical data and request immediate assistance. The message was encoded and transmitted toward the human sector. The small Federation fleet began moving into defensive formation, though everyone aboard knew it was merely delaying the inevitable. The Void Hunters had never been stopped by such a small force. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. The enemy fleet continued its inexorable advance, their ships growing larger on the display screens. Just as Zexhar was beginning to think the humans hadn't received their message, the communications console erupted with activity. Sir, we're receiving a response from the human fleet, the communications officer announced, her voice filled with surprise. It's from Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Put it through, Zexhar ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female with short gray hair and intense blue eyes. Her uniform was crisp and military, bearing insignia that Zexhar didn't recognize. Captain Zexhar, this is Admiral Chen. We received your distress call and your tactical data. We're mobilizing immediately to assist your position. Admiral, I appreciate your willingness to help, but you must understand the magnitude of this threat. There are over 600 Void Hunter vessels approaching our position. How many ships can you spare? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Captain, we don't do half measures when it comes to backup. When humanity commits to a fight, we commit completely. But Admiral, the Void Hunters are... We know exactly what the Void Hunters are, Captain. We've been studying them since we joined the Federation. Just hold your position and keep your people safe. Help is coming. The transmission ended, leaving Zexhar staring at the empty holographic space. He turned to his bridge crew, all of whom looked as confused as he felt. Sir, his tactical officer called out. The human response fleet is beginning to appear on long-range sensors. Zexhar expected to see perhaps 24 ships at most. The humans were brave, but their technology was limited. What appeared on his sensors, however, defied all logic and expectation. That can't be right, he whispered, staring at the display. Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array. The tactical officer's hands flew over his controls. Sensors are functioning perfectly, sir. The readings are accurate. Where Zexhar expected to see a small patrol fleet, space itself seemed to be filling with human vessels. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of ships were emerging from hyperspace. The display showed massive dreadnoughts, sleek destroyers, agile fighters, and ship classes that the Federation databases couldn't even identify. By the void, Commander Yeath breathed. How many ships do the humans have? The answer came from their communications officer, who was monitoring human fleet channels. Sir, based on their transmissions, I'm detecting over 4,000 human vessels, and the number is still climbing. Zexhar's mind reeled. The entire Federation fleet barely numbered 3,000 ships across all member worlds. How had the humans, supposedly primitive newcomers, assembled such a massive armada? "Captain," his science officer called out, "I'm detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. Some of these human ships are generating power levels that exceed our theoretical maximums." Admiral Chen's image appeared again on the communication display. "Captain Zexhar, this is Admiral Chen. The first human expeditionary fleet has arrived at your position. We'll handle the Void Hunters from here." "First fleet?" Zexhar managed to stammer. "How many fleets do you have?" Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "Enough, Captain, enough." The bridge of the luminous dawn fell silent as the human fleet continued to materialize around them. Ships of impossible size emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with unknown alloys and bristling with weapon systems that defied conventional understanding. The largest vessels dwarfed even the Federation's mighty battlecruisers. "Captain, I'm reading some of these human ships as over 12 kilometers in length," the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with awe. "The energy output from their engines alone exceeds the total power generation of our entire patrol fleet." Zexhar watched in fascination as the human formation took shape. Unlike the rigid, predictable patterns taught in Federation military academies, the human fleet moved with fluid precision. Smaller ships darted between the massive capital vessels like schools of fish, while medium cruisers formed protective screens around the dreadnoughts. "Sir, the humans are hailing us again," the communications officer announced. Admiral Chen's image reappeared, but this time she was standing in what appeared to be a command center, bustling with activity. Banks of holographic displays showed tactical information, and dozens of human officers coordinated the massive fleet movement. "Captain Zexhar, we're going to need your ships to fall back to a safe distance. What we're about to do gets a bit messy, and we don't want any friendly fire incidents." "Admiral, surely you're not planning to engage the Void Hunters directly. Even with your impressive fleet, they still outnumber." "Captain," Admiral Chen interrupted gently, "you're thinking like the old Federation, counting ships and comparing numbers. That's not how humans fight." Before Zexhar could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut through the conversation. "Sir, the Void Hunter fleet is accelerating. They're moving to attack formation." On the display, the dark ships of the Void Hunters spread across space like an infection. Their vessels were organic in appearance, grown rather than built, with twisted hulls that seemed to absorb light. At their center loomed the massive harvester ships, kilometer-long monstrosities designed to consume entire worlds. "All Federation vessels fall back immediately," Admiral Chen ordered. "We're going hot in 30 seconds. Zexhar gave the order to retreat, and his small fleet began moving away from the battle zone. As they withdrew, he watched the human fleet transform. What had seemed like a massive but conventional military formation suddenly revealed its true nature. The largest human vessels began to unfold. Sections of their hulls separated and reconfigured, revealing weapon systems that had been completely hidden. Smaller ships emerged from launch bays that hadn't been visible moments before. The entire fleet seemed to double in size as hidden components deployed. "By the ancestors," Commander Yith whispered. "They weren't showing us their full strength." "No," Zexhar replied, understanding dawning. They weren't. The human flagship, a massive vessel that Admiral Chen had identified as the Indomitable, began broadcasting on all frequencies. The transmission wasn't directed at the Federation ships, but at the Void Hunters themselves. "Attention, Void Hunter fleet," Admiral Chen's voice echoed across space. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. You have entered a system under the protection of the Galactic Federation and humanity. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response from the Void Hunters came not in words, but in action. The entire enemy fleet surged forward, their weapons charging with malevolent energy. The Federation had never successfully communicated with the Void Hunters. They were a force of pure destruction that recognized no diplomacy. "I guess they choose the consequences." Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication link, sounding almost amused. What happened next defied everything Zexhar thought he knew about space combat. The human fleet didn't charge forward in the glorious but futile tradition of Federation tactics. Instead, space around the Void Hunters simply exploded. The first wave of destruction came from weapons that fired no visible projectiles. Void Hunter ships simply began tearing apart as if reality itself was attacking them. The massive harvester vessels, which had been considered invulnerable by Federation standards, crumpled like paper under an invisible assault. "What are they doing?" Zexhar demanded of his science officer. "I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions, sir. The humans appear to be weaponizing gravity itself. They're creating localized black holes and gravitational shears." Before Zexhar could process this information, the second wave of the human attack began. Beams of pure energy, brighter than stars, lanced across space. Where they struck Void Hunter vessels, the enemy ships didn't just explode, they ceased to exist. Their matter converted directly to energy. "Those are antimatter beams," the science officer reported, his voice shaking. "Somehow they've learned to focus antimatter into coherent weapons. The energy release is beyond our ability to measure." The Void Hunter fleet, which had seemed so overwhelmingly powerful minutes before, was being systematically dismantled. Their return fire struck human shields that absorbed planet-killing energies without even flickering. The organic Void Hunter vessels began attempting to retreat, but space around them had become a maze of gravitational anomalies that prevented escape. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "I'm intercepting human fleet communications. They're coordinating their attack using something called quantum entanglement communicators. They're sharing tactical information instantaneously across their entire fleet." The human ships moved with impossible coordination, each vessel knowing exactly where every other ship was and what it was doing at any given moment. It was like watching a single organism with thousands of parts all working in perfect harmony. In less than 20 minutes, the battle was over. The Void Hunter fleet, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was reduced to scattered debris and fading energy signatures. Not a single human vessel showed even minor damage. Admiral Chen's image appeared once more on the communication display. Behind her, the command center was calm and professional, as if they had just completed a routine training exercise. "Captain Zexhar, the threat has been neutralized. We'll remain in the area for a few hours to make sure we didn't miss any stragglers. Then we'll escort your patrol fleet back to Federation space." Zexhar found his voice after several attempts. "Admiral, how is this possible? The Void Hunters have never been defeated. The Federation has lost entire fleets to forces much smaller than what you just destroyed." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Zexhar saw something that chilled him to his core. It wasn't cruelty or malice, but simple matter-of-fact confidence. "Captain, when humanity joined the Federation, we were impressed by your technology and your peaceful cooperation. But we never stopped being human. We never stopped preparing for war." The journey back to Federation space took 3 standard days. But for Captain Zexhar, every moment was filled with growing amazement, and if he was honest with himself, a deep sense of unease. The human fleet had not returned to wherever they had come from. Instead, they maintained formation around the small Federation patrol group like protective guardians. During the trip, Zexhar found himself in frequent communication with Admiral Chen. What he learned challenged everything the Federation thought they knew about their newest members. "Admiral, if I may ask," Zexhar said during one of their conversations, "where did you acquire such advanced technology? When humanity joined the Federation, your ships were using primitive fusion drives and kinetic weapons." Admiral Chen leaned back in her command chair, her expression thoughtful. "Captain, those were our civilian exploration vessels and our basic patrol ships. What you saw in the initial contact were essentially our equivalent of cargo haulers and police cruisers. Then what we've seen today represents your military technology." "Some of it," Admiral Chen replied. "This is our first expeditionary fleet. It's designed for rapid response and dealing with medium-scale threats." Zexhar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Medium-scale threats? You destroyed over 600 Void Hunter vessels in 20 minutes. What do you consider a large-scale threat?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, and Zexhar noticed several human officers in the background exchanging glances. "Captain, let me ask you something. In all of Federation history, have you ever encountered a species that was actively genocidal? One that sought to destroy all other life in the galaxy? The Void Hunters are the closest we've come to such a threat, and we've always considered them unstoppable." "They were unstoppable using Federation tactics and technology," Admiral Chen corrected. "But humans have a saying, there's no such thing as an unstoppable force, only insufficient application of energy." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Zexhar's science officer. "Captain, you need to see this. I've been analyzing the debris field from the battle. The holographic display showed the scattered remains of the Void Hunter fleet. But as Zexar looked closer, he realized what had shocked his science officer. The debris wasn't floating randomly through space, it was being systematically collected and processed by small human ships. "They're harvesting the wreckage," Zexar observed. "More than that, sir. They're analyzing every component, every piece of technology. The humans are learning everything there is to know about Void Hunter capabilities." Admiral Chen noticed Zexar's attention on the salvage operation. "We don't waste opportunities to learn about potential threats, Captain. Every piece of that fleet will be studied, understood, and cataloged. If we ever face the Void Hunters again, we'll be even better prepared. But you destroyed them so easily. Surely there's no need for such detailed analysis. Captain, this was just one fleet. We have reason to believe the Void Hunters have multiple staging areas throughout the galaxy. This was a scouting force, not their main strength." The implications of this statement hit Zexar like a physical blow. If the Void Hunters had larger fleets somewhere in the galaxy, and the Federation had barely been able to handle the smaller forces they'd encountered, then the threat was far greater than anyone had imagined. "How do you know this?" he asked. "Because, Captain, humanity has been preparing for a galactic war since the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe." Admiral Chen gestured to her tactical display, which showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red zones marked known Void Hunter territories, but there were also numerous amber areas indicating suspected staging grounds. When we joined the Federation, we spent our first year just observing and learning. We studied every conflict, every threat, every military engagement in recorded Federation history. What we found was a pattern of reactive defense. The Federation responds to threats after they appear. And humans do things differently. Humans prepare for threats before they appear. We plan for worst-case scenarios. We build weapons and strategies for enemies we haven't met yet. Zexar thought about this. "Is that why you brought such a massive fleet to respond to our distress call?" "Partly, but mainly because we take our commitments seriously. When someone calls for backup, humans don't send the minimum force required. We send overwhelming force to ensure the job gets done right the first time." The Federation ships were approaching the border of human space when Zexar's communications officer picked up an interesting transmission. "Sir, I'm detecting a massive fleet movement within human territory. It appears dozens of fleets are returning to various bases." "Returning?" Zexar asked. Admiral Chen overheard the comment. "Captain, when your distress call went out, we didn't just mobilize the first expeditionary fleet. We activated our entire rapid response network. Every available fleet was placed on high alert and moved to support positions." "How many fleets?" 12 expeditionary fleets were fully mobilized. Another 30 garrison fleets were placed on standby. Various specialized units were also activated. Zexar did quick calculations in his head. If each fleet was comparable to what he had seen, humanity possessed military forces that dwarfed the entire Federation combined. "Admiral, just how large is the human military?" "Large enough," she replied diplomatically. As they reached the edge of Federation space, Zexar was treated to another surprise. Human bases and installations that had been invisible to Federation sensors suddenly became apparent as the expeditionary fleet transmitted identification codes. Massive space stations, hidden shipyards, and defensive platforms revealed themselves throughout what the Federation had considered empty space. "We've been building up our infrastructure since joining the Federation," Admiral Chen explained, "but we've kept most of it off the official charts. Old human habits die hard. You don't trust the Federation?" "We trust the Federation completely, Captain. But humans have learned through bitter experience that trust alone isn't enough to keep people safe. We verify everything, and we prepare for every contingency." The human fleet began dispersing as they entered Federation space proper. Some ships returned to hidden bases. Others took up patrol routes that Zexar now realized had been invisibly protecting Federation territory all along. "Admiral, may I ask one final question?" "Of course, Captain." "If the Void Hunters had arrived with 10 times the force we encountered today, what would humanity's response have been?" Admiral Chen smiled, but there was something cold in her expression. "Then we would have sent the second fleet as well. And if that wasn't enough, the third. We have contingency plans that go all the way up to the 18th fleet." 18 fleets? Captain, when I said humans prepare for every contingency, I meant every contingency. We have plans for threats the Federation hasn't even imagined yet. As the luminous dawn finally reached Federation headquarters, Zexar realized that the galaxy was a very different place than he had thought that morning. Humanity wasn't just another member species struggling to find their place among the stars. They were a sleeping giant that had been quietly preparing for wars that might come, and they were on the Federation side. Federation High Command was in chaos when Captain Zexar arrived to deliver his report. Word of the massive human fleet response had somehow leaked, and representatives from dozens of member species were demanding explanations. The Grand Council chamber, normally a place of calm deliberation, buzzed with nervous energy and heated discussions. Chancellor Vrax of the Altarian Republic was the first to confront Zexar as he entered the briefing room. "Captain, is it true that the humans deployed over 4,000 warships in response to a simple distress call?" "It is true, Chancellor, but the situation was far from simple." "Explain," demanded General Korthak of the Zephyrian Defense Forces. "Our intelligence report suggested the humans possessed perhaps 200 vessels total. Where did this armada come from?" Zexar activated the holographic display and began showing the tactical recordings from the battle. The assembled representatives fell silent as they watched the human fleet annihilate the Void Hunter force with casual efficiency. "By the cosmic wines," whispered Ambassador Thys of the Crystal Union. "Those weapons, we have nothing like them in our databases." "Because they're beyond anything we've previously encountered," Zexar confirmed. "The humans have been developing technology in complete secrecy since joining the Federation." Secretary General Morvain, the Federation's highest-ranking official, leaned forward. "Captain, did you get any indication of the full extent of human military capabilities?" "Secretary General, what I learned suggests that everything we thought we knew about humanity was carefully managed information. They've been operating 18 separate fleets, with supporting infrastructure that spans multiple sectors." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Representative Kell of the Harmony Collective stood up abruptly. "This is intolerable. The Federation has transparency agreements. All member species are required to disclose their military capabilities." "Perhaps," said a new voice from the chamber entrance, "you should read the actual agreements more carefully." Everyone turned to see Admiral Chen walking into the room, flanked by 2 human officers. She wore a formal diplomatic uniform rather than her military attire, but her presence commanded immediate attention. "Admiral Chen," Secretary General Morvain said, rising to greet her, "we weren't expecting you to attend this briefing. When my people's integrity is questioned, I make it a point to address the concerns personally." Admiral Chen replied calmly. "Representative Kell, you mentioned transparency agreements. Would you like me to review what humanity actually agreed to disclose?" Representative Kell's tentacles writhed nervously. The standard military disclosure requires enumeration of all active military vessels and installations." "Correct. And humanity has complied with that requirement. We have disclosed every single vessel and installation that was active at the time we joined the Federation. But the fleet we witnessed today was not active 5 years ago when we joined," Admiral Chen interrupted smoothly. "The agreements require disclosure of existing capabilities, not future developments. Humanity has been completely transparent about what we had when we joined. What we've built since then is our sovereign right." General Korthak stepped forward aggressively. "This is semantic trickery. You've been secretly building a military force that could conquer the entire Federation." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted subtly. The 2 human officers behind her moved almost imperceptibly, and suddenly Zexar realized they weren't just diplomatic escorts, they were bodyguards, and very dangerous ones. "General," Admiral Chen said quietly, "you seem to be confused about humanity's intentions. Let me clarify something very important. If humanity wanted to conquer the Federation, there would be no Federation left to have this conversation." The room fell deadly silent. Secretary General Morvain cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, perhaps you could explain humanity's actual intentions?" "Certainly." Admiral Chen activated her own holographic display showing a galactic map. "When humanity learned about the Federation, we were impressed by the cooperation and peaceful coexistence between different species. We wanted to be part of that, but we also recognized that peace requires strength to maintain it." The display zoomed in on various sectors, showing hidden human installations and patrol routes. For the past 5 years, while the Federation has focused on diplomatic solutions and peaceful expansion, Humanity has been quietly building the military infrastructure necessary to defend that peace. Ambassador Thys studied the display with growing amazement. You've been protecting us this entire time without telling us? Correct. Human vessels have intercepted 17 separate pirate fleets, stopped 5 different raiding expeditions, and prevented 3 attempted invasions of Federation space. None of these incidents ever reached Federation attention because they were handled before they became problems. Chancellor Vrax's scales shifted color, a sign of deep concern among his species. Why the secrecy? Why not coordinate with Federation forces? Because, Chancellor, Federation military doctrine is reactive. You respond to threats after they appear. Humanity prefers proactive defense. We eliminate threats before they can harm innocent people. But the scale of your response today, General Korthak protested. It was completely disproportionate to the threat. Admiral Chen turned to face him directly. General, 600 Void Hunter vessels is not a threat to be taken lightly. Our analysis suggests that this was merely an advance force. Intelligence indicates that the main Void Hunter armada numbers in the tens of thousands of ships. The assembled representatives gasped collectively. Secretary General Morvain spoke for all of them. Tens of thousands? How do you know this? Because humanity has been conducting deep reconnaissance missions into Void Hunter territory for the past 3 years. We've located their primary staging areas, identified their command structure, and analyzed their strategic objectives. Without informing the Federation? Representative Kell demanded. Without endangering Federation personnel with information they weren't equipped to act upon, Admiral Chen corrected. Tell me, Representative, what would the Federation have done with the knowledge that an enemy force 50 times larger than anything previously encountered was planning a coordinated assault on civilized space? The silence that followed answered her question eloquently. Exactly, Admiral Chen continued. The Federation would have called for diplomatic negotiations, formed study committees, and spent years debating response strategies. Meanwhile, the Void Hunters would have completed their preparations and launched a devastating attack. Secretary General Morvain leaned back in his chair, looking suddenly older. Admiral, what you're describing suggests that the Federation's entire approach to galactic security has been inadequate. Not inadequate. Secretary General, different. The Federation represents the best of what civilized species can achieve when they work together peacefully. But peace requires guardians, and guardians must be prepared for war. And humanity appointed itself as these guardians? General Korthak asked, his tone accusatory. Humanity accepted the responsibility that came with our capabilities. Admiral Chen replied firmly. When you can protect innocent people from harm, you have a moral obligation to do so. Captain Zexhar had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he spoke up. Admiral, you mentioned intelligence about a larger Void Hunter force. Are we still in danger? Admiral Chen nodded grimly. The force we defeated today was a reconnaissance mission. Based on our intelligence, the main Void Hunter fleet will likely arrive within 6 standard months. They're planning a coordinated assault on multiple Federation worlds simultaneously. What can be done? Secretary General Morvain asked. The Federation can continue doing what it does best, maintaining peaceful cooperation between member species and focusing on diplomatic solutions where possible. Humanity will handle the military aspects of this crisis. You mean to face this threat alone? Ambassador Thys asked. Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Ambassador, humanity is never alone. We're part of the Federation now, and we protect our own. 3 months later, Captain Zexhar found himself aboard the human vessel Resilience, serving as a Federation liaison for what the humans called Operation Galactic Shield. Experience had been both educational and terrifying. The Resilience was smaller than Admiral Chen's flagship, but still massive by Federation standards. What made it truly remarkable wasn't its size, but its purpose. The ship was essentially a mobile command center designed to coordinate defensive operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. Captain Zexhar, called Commander Sarah Mitchell, the ship's human captain. We're receiving updated intelligence from our deep reconnaissance teams. Would you like to see what we're dealing with? Zexhar made his way to the main tactical display, where the latest intelligence was being processed. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Void Hunter main fleet was even larger than Admiral Chen had estimated. 12,000 confirmed vessels, Commander Mitchell reported matter-of-factly. including 8 Harvester-class world destroyers and what appears to be a new class of ship we're calling Devourers. Each Devourer is roughly the size of a small moon. How can such a force be stopped? Zexar asked, though he was beginning to understand that humans had a very different perspective on impossible odds. The same way we stop any threat, Captain. Careful planning, overwhelming force, and absolute commitment to victory. The tactical display shifted to show human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. What Zexar saw defied comprehension. Humanity had deployed forces on a scale that suggested they had been planning this operation for years. Commander, how many ships has humanity committed to this defense? All of them, she replied simply. All of them. Every single combat-capable vessel in human space. We've also recalled our deep exploration fleets, converted civilian vessels to military support roles, and activated our reserve shipyards to maximum production. The numbers appeared on the display. Over 30,000 human vessels of various classes, supported by fixed defensive installations, mobile weapon platforms, and something called strategic defense nodes that the humans refused to explain in detail. But if you commit everything to this battle, Zexar said, what protects human civilian populations? Commander Mitchell looked at him with an expression he'd come to recognize on human faces, a mixture of determination and cold calculation that emerged when they discussed protecting people they cared about, Captain. If the Void Hunters succeed in their assault, there won't be any civilian populations left to protect. Not human, not Federation, not anywhere in the galaxy. This isn't just a military operation. This is humanity's stand for the survival of all intelligent life. Over the following weeks, Zexar watched as the human war machine revealed its true scope. Hidden shipyards throughout human space worked around the clock, producing new vessels using technology that seemed to advance daily. Human scientists and engineers shared innovations in real time across their entire civilization, creating a level of technological cooperation that the Federation had never achieved. More remarkably, humanity began sharing some of their defensive technology with Federation worlds. Advanced shield generators, point defense systems, and early warning networks were provided to every inhabited system in Federation space. Why share your military technology? Zexar asked Admiral Chen during one of their strategic briefings. These advantages could ensure human dominance for centuries. Captain, what good is dominance over a dead galaxy? Admiral Chen replied, if we survive this crisis, we want to continue living alongside our Federation allies, not ruling over them. The Void Hunter fleet's approach was detected 2 weeks before their estimated arrival. The massive armada moved through space like a dark plague, consuming everything in their path. Uninhabited systems simply ceased to exist as the Devourers stripped them of all matter and energy. Final preparations are complete, Admiral Chen announced during the fleet-wide briefing. All human forces are in position. Federation evacuation fleets have moved civilian populations to secure areas. In 18 hours, we'll know whether our preparations were sufficient. Zexar studied the battle plan one final time. Humanity had divided the galaxy into defensive zones, with multiple fleet groups positioned to respond to Void Hunter advances. But what struck him most was the overall strategy. While the Federation would have tried to meet the enemy in open space, humanity planned to make them fight for every system, every planet, every inhabited world. You're not trying to stop them, he realized. You're trying to destroy them completely. Correct, Admiral Chen confirmed. Half measures don't work against genocidal enemies. The Void Hunters have to be eliminated as a threat permanently. But the cost, even with your advanced technology, casualties will be enormous. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, and Zexar saw something he'd never seen before in her expression. Genuine sadness mixed with unwavering resolve. Captain, humanity learned a long time ago that some things are worth any cost. The survival of intelligent life in the galaxy is one of those things. The first Void Hunter forces entered Federation space exactly when human intelligence had predicted. They struck simultaneously at 12 different systems, expecting to overwhelm defensive forces and begin their harvest of civilized worlds. Instead, they found themselves facing defensive networks that had been specifically designed to counter their tactics. Human forces didn't engage in the glorious but ineffective fleet battles that the Void Hunters expected. Instead, they used mobility, superior technology, and perfect coordination to systematically dismantle the enemy forces. Zexhar watched from the Resilience as Admiral Chen coordinated the defense of an entire galactic spiral arm. Hundreds of separate battles were fought simultaneously, with human commanders sharing tactical data instantaneously across impossible distances. "How is this possible?" he asked Commander Mitchell. "How can your forces coordinate so perfectly across such vast distances?" "Quantum entanglement communicators," she replied. "Every human ship and installation is connected in real time. We don't fight as separate fleets. We fight as a single unified force." The first day of battle ended with humanity successfully repelling every Void Hunter assault. Not a single Federation world had been lost and enemy casualties were devastating. But Zexhar knew this was only the beginning. "Admiral," he said to Chen after the initial reports came in, "your forces performed magnificently today, but the main Void Hunter fleet hasn't even arrived yet." Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "Captain, today was just the warm-up. Tomorrow, we find out if humanity is really ready to defend the galaxy." Outside the Resilience, space filled with the lights of human reinforcement fleets arriving from across their territory. The real battle was about to begin. The main Void Hunter fleet arrived like a storm of living darkness. 12,000 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent energy. At their center, the 8 Harvester ships and 3 moon-sized Devourers represented a level of destructive power that had never been seen in the galaxy. Captain Zexhar stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching as Admiral Chen coordinated humanity's response. The human admiral showed no emotion as she faced a force that could theoretically destroy every inhabited world in the galaxy. "All fleets report ready," came the announcement from the communications center. "Strategic defense nodes are online. Evacuation protocols complete." "Admiral," Zexhar said quietly, "are you certain humanity can prevail against such odds?" Admiral Chen turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled with genuine warmth instead of grim determination. "Captain, let me tell you something about humans. We don't fight fair, we don't fight with honor, and we don't fight by anyone else's rules. We fight to win, and we fight to protect the people we care about. Today that includes everyone in the Federation." The tactical display showed the Void Hunter fleet advancing toward the core Federation worlds. Their strategy was simple and brutal: overwhelm all defenses through sheer numbers and firepower. It was the same strategy that had worked for them across countless galaxies. But as they advanced, space around them began to change. "Strategic Defense Node Alpha is activating," reported Commander. Mitchell Zexhar watched in amazement as hidden installations throughout the star system revealed themselves. What he had thought were asteroids, derelict ships, and space debris suddenly came online as massive weapon platforms. The entire system had been turned into a fortress. "How long have you been preparing this?" he asked. "Construction began the day after you called for backup," Admiral Chen replied. "We've been working around the clock for 3 months to turn every strategic system into a defensive stronghold." The first wave of Void Hunter ships entered the system and immediately came under attack from weapons that defied all conventional understanding. Space itself seemed to twist and bend as human gravity manipulators created localized singularities. Entire squadrons of enemy vessels were crushed out of existence or torn apart by gravitational shears. But the Void Hunters had expected losses. They pressed forward, their organic ships adapting to the gravitational attacks with disturbing efficiency. Return fire from their biological weapons began destroying human defensive platforms. Phase 2, Admiral Chen ordered calmly. Suddenly, the human fleets that had been holding back at the system's edge began their approach, but they didn't advance in traditional formation. Instead, they seemed to materialize throughout the battlefield as if teleporting into combat. "Micro-jump technology," Commander Mitchell explained to Zexhar's amazed expression. "We can make hyperspace jumps of just a few thousand kilometers. It allows us to appear anywhere on the battlefield instantly." The battle became a 3-dimensional maze of death as human ships flickered in and out of existence, striking Void Hunter forces from impossible angles before vanishing again. The enemy's numerical advantage became meaningless when they couldn't predict where the next attack would come from. Zexhar watched one of the massive Harvester ships being systematically dismantled by a squadron of human destroyers that appeared, fired, and disappeared faster than the enemy could respond. The Harvester's organic hull began to regenerate the damage, but the humans simply appeared again and targeted the same weakened spots. "They're learning," Admiral Chen observed. watching the Void Hunter fleet attempt to adapt to human tactics. But not fast enough. Phase 3, she ordered. The largest human ships, which had remained hidden throughout the battle, suddenly revealed themselves. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the harvester ships appeared throughout the battlefield. But these weren't just large vessels, they were mobile weapon platforms designed specifically to kill world-destroying threats. The first Devourer, the moon-sized ship at the center of the Void Hunter formation, found itself under attack from weapons that shouldn't have been possible. Focused antimatter beams struck its hull with the force of stellar explosions. Gravity cannons created localized black holes that began consuming the massive vessel from within. Impossible, Zexhar whispered as he watched the Devourer begin to collapse. Nothing can destroy something that large. Captain, Admiral Chen said softly, when you're protecting everyone you care about. Impossible is just another word for a challenge that requires creative thinking. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships darted through the battlefield like deadly phantoms, striking with precision and overwhelming force before vanishing again. The Void Hunters, for all their adaptability and regenerative capabilities, couldn't cope with an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. One by one, the massive enemy vessels fell. Harvesters were torn apart by coordinated assault teams. Devourers collapsed under the assault of weapons that turned their own mass against them. The organic ships that formed the bulk of the Void Hunter fleet found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. How are you coordinating so perfectly? Zexhar asked as he watched human forces execute maneuvers that required split-second timing across vast distances. Every human ship is equipped with quantum processing systems, Commander Mitchell explained. We're not just sharing information, we're sharing computational power. Our entire fleet is essentially one massive computer network. As the battle entered its final phase, the surviving Void Hunter ships attempted to retreat. But space around them had become a prison of gravitational anomalies and micro-jump interdiction fields. There would be no escape. Final phase, Admiral Chen announced. Human reinforcement fleets that had been held in reserve throughout the galaxy suddenly appeared around the battlefield. Hundreds of fresh ships surrounded the remaining Void Hunter forces, ensuring that not a single enemy vessel would survive to threaten the galaxy again. Admiral, Zexhar said as he watched the last Void Hunter ship succumb to human firepower. You didn't just defeat them, you eliminated them completely. That was always the plan, Captain. The Void Hunters were a threat to all intelligent life. Such threats can't be bargained with, contained, or reformed. They can only be eliminated. The battlefield fell silent as the last enemy vessel was destroyed. 12,000 Void Hunter ships, including the most powerful fleet ever assembled by their species, had been completely annihilated. Not a single human vessel had been lost. Captain Zexhar, Admiral Chen said as cleanup operations began, I have a message for you to take back to the Federation Council. What message, Admiral? Humanity is honored to be part of the Galactic Federation. We look forward to many years of peaceful cooperation and mutual prosperity, and anyone who threatens that peace will discover that when humans promise to provide backup, we mean it. As Zexhar prepared to return to Federation space, he realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Federation would continue to be a beacon of peaceful cooperation between species, but now it had guardians who were willing and able to defend that peace against any threat. Humanity had asked for nothing in return for their protection except the chance to be part of something greater than themselves. They had taken on the responsibility of defending an entire galaxy, not for power or glory, but because it was the right thing to do. The age of humanity as the galaxy's silent protectors had begun.